All right, guys, welcome to the Ravit Show. I am super excited because we have a special guest today, and it's none other than Adrian Estala, VP Data Mesh Consulting Services at Starburst. We can't wait to discuss what's driving data mesh, how it solves both business and data problems, and much more. So feel free to let your questions come in. And Adrian is out there. He's super cool advocate, I would say, for data mesh. He also has the data mesh TV where he hosts a lot of I would say a lot of guests and talks a lot around data mesh. So you can go out there, ask questions around data mesh. Also, we have a very cool giveaway that we are doing today. It's none other than a hard copy of the data mesh book by Zhamak, and it will be with a personalized note by me. So what you guys need to do is to enter the raffle. You just need to type in, I'm pulling the hashtag up here for you guys, and this is what you guys need to type in. I can already see Ganesh typing in data mesh. So what happens here is once you start typing in, you guys will be up for the raffle, and towards the end of the show we'll be announcing one winner who has the chance to win the hard copy of the data mesh book by Zhamak. Also, for the folks who wish to learn more about it, and who wish to download the copy, Starburst has been super kind to make the copy available for you guys free on their website. And what I'll be doing is putting in a link here where you can download the book very quickly. So here we go, and also ask questions around data mesh. Also, very quickly, bringing up our guest here. Hey, Adrian, welcome to the Ravit Show.
Hey, glad to be here. So excited. I've watched the show. I watched your show to learn how to do my show, and so this is like a really cool moment for me. I'm a little bit starstruck. So let me get past that. So great to be
Those
here.
are very kind words, Adrian. Though I love what you're doing with Data Mesh TV and the stuff that you provide, the information, the guests that you are hosting are amazing. So for the folks who are learning now about Data Mesh TV, you can go check it out. Adrian is doing a fantastic job with having the world's best CTOs in there and asking them different types of questions. Not only CTOs but all the data leaders out there. So go check it out. Very quickly checking the folks who are joining us. Ramdas is here. Hey Ramdas, welcome to the Ravit Show. We have a lot of folks saying data mesh. So everyone typing in data mesh, you have a chance to win a hard copy. Scott Taylor is here. Hey Scott, mesh me
Data
baby.
whisperer.
Data whisperer. So let's get the ball rolling. But obviously, Adrian, to start with, why not introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. So I'm a former CDO. I actually spent the first 13 years of my career doing consulting. So I'm not new to consulting. I did that for a while. And then I spent the last 10 years of my career working in various IT leadership roles. The last role I had was I was a CDO. I was the IT for IT CDO at Shell. I had a problem that a lot of us have. I had data all over the place, and I was really trying to find a way to not only connect it, but find a way to kind of make it valuable for my consumers. And I came across Starburst. This was just August of last year, and I joined Starburst. Remember the first. Ravit, I promised myself. I said the next time I see that I get the warm fuzzies when I see a technology or a capability that I really love. I'm gonna take a risk, and so I took it. I'm super excited to kind of be on this side of the world, so to speak. New for me for sure, but I'm very excited to talk data mesh, and I think I bring a certain level of experience because of my CDO role and because of my 20-something years in IT. So there you go. That's me.
Oh, this is fantastic. And definitely that also gives us an opportunity where we can ask you all the questions around data mesh. So folks who are joining us, it's a former CDO talking about data mesh today. So it will be super interesting to learn more about it, how data mesh started and what is data mesh. So jumping right in, I know for a fact where our audience wants to, obviously learn more about what is data mesh. So let's start with data mesh and then get into the weeds. What do you think, Adrian?
Yeah, fantastic. I tell a A very simple story for data mesh, and I don't want to oversimplify it for you. There's a lot to understand, and so if you want to study data mesh, Zhamak, hopefully you'll get that free book, and if you don't, we'll give you a website or a link where you can kind of get a digital copy. But what you'll learn about in that book are the four pillars, right? You'll learn about domains and data products and self-service and federated computational governance. And there's a lot to talk about there. And you've probably seen videos or read documents or blogs about every one of those categories. When I talk about data mesh, I try to build a real simple foundation just to get started so we can have a conversation without kind of getting into some of the details. And so I break it up into 3 steps, right? I say step 1 of a data mesh is just connectivity. And so it's the principle for anyone building a data mesh. Principle number 1 is leverage your data where it is, right? If you're having to migrate your data, it's probably not a mesh. It doesn't mean that there may not be a reason to migrate. Sometimes there's a good reason to do that. But principle number 1 for any data mesh is to try to leverage your data where it is. Use it where it is. Leave it where it is if you can. Now, principle number 2, and this is where people take a big step from a data fabric concept, which you would say sounds awfully similar, data mesh and data fabric. We're connecting all your data where it is, decentralized data sources, very similar data fabric, data mesh. Here's where data mesh takes a step forward. Data mesh then says, now that we've got all your data connected, let's organize it in these logical domains. And here's the difference, right? These are the domains, these are logical domains that your consumer understands, right? And so if you're dealing with a business consumer, it should be a domain they recognize. It's a finance domain or a retail domain, something they can appreciate. I know when I go to my domain, I see the data that I'm looking for, right? We always, as a CDO, one of the painful questions we get all the time is, where's my data? It's in your domain. And so we can stop talking about all the data sources and we can start talking about domain. That's the first step in a data mesh, a logical domain. The third step in a data mesh is then within that domain, starting to create reusable, shareable, interoperable data products. And so you bring that consumer in the room, Ravi, not the architects, right? You can leave the architects in the room, but what's more important is to bring that consumer in the room, and you let that consumer start to tell you how they use a data, where they use the data, where they get the data, so to speak, right? And you can start to build for them aggregated data sets with descriptions and that tell you where it came from. It tells you how to use it, tells you who else is using it, gives you an idea for what kind of quality data you're dealing with. That's a valuable data product. And all of a sudden you're giving the consumer something they can quickly put to work, something they can quickly use for insight. That is my simple 3-step dance, if you will, for a data mesh. And I skip some of the most important pieces like autonomy and self-service. Those are really important, but you build those capabilities once you get that foundation in place.
Yeah, I think these are definitely great principles and very important points that you have mentioned here, Adrian. I know for a fact there are a lot of questions coming in. I'll definitely be picking up those questions. But before that, I would love to know from you, how is data mesh different from what we've been already doing?
Yeah.
And how, like, what's the differentiation that you see, and how would you, what's your take basically?
You used to have a boss who would say, so what's different this time, right? We always had a new IT transformation, whether it was, SAP or outsourcing, or now, and then it became cloud migration, IaaS, cloud migration, PaaS, cloud migration. It's always something new. And so when you sit in front of a business leader, it's like, all right, so what's different this time? There's some uniqueness, if you will, to a data mesh concept and the data mesh framework that I think make it different, right? First and foremost, where we're used to these big transformational exercises that take a long time to get value from, right? So a big cloud migration, you got to migrate all your data to the cloud. And once you get it there, then you can start to use it, right? We're used to big SAP implementations where you have to kind of spend a long time building something. And once you build it, then you can use it. Data mesh is different because you can start small and start getting value fairly quickly, right? You don't have to build this to get value. You can build this for a specific team and get value. And so the data mesh lends itself to some of the agile ways of working that we're already doing. That's the first difference. The second difference is that this is business focused, right? You heard me talk about domains and data products a second ago. It's not IT building something for IT. It's IT teams working together with the business to build something for the business. That's different. That's unique. That's new. And the last piece I would say is urgency, right? There is an incredible amount of urgency for anybody's digital transformation or their data strategy to do more with their data. And so you tie that urgency with the ability to deliver fast, and I think you've got a really unique opportunity that makes it different than what we're used to in the past.
Yeah, I think fantastic. Very well defined in terms of how it is different and why data mesh is important right now. So thanks for bringing that up, Adrian, and thanks for explaining it so clearly. Let's see what type of questions we have coming up. But just one last question that I want to ask and promise to our audience that I'll be picking up their questions then. So why do you think it is a game changer, a trend, or you expect it to have like staying in power? Like when you talk about the business problem, what business problems does it solve, and what type of benefits do you see there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love calling it a game changer, and so I'm guilty of that. And so let me first, before I tell you, kind of bring it back a little bit. Let me first say I'm one of the first ones out there saying this is a game changer. You just heard my speech on why it's different, but we have to be careful not to overhype it, right? We have to be careful that we learn from all of our past experiences. I don't know that we wake up tomorrow and the world's different, right? There's a lot of work to get there, right? I do think you can get some early wins with the data mesh, but to really drive an enterprise sustainable approach, it takes time to get there. I would say that the reason why this has staying power is we're not talking about a technology. Data mesh isn't a technology that's going to change tomorrow. Data mesh is a framework. It's an approach. It ties technology with people and with process. That's why I think it has an opportunity to be sustainable over a longer period of time. The technology is going to change. You're going to have new data sources for sure. You can connect into your data mesh. Your analytics use cases in the front end are going to change. You're going to have stronger analytics engines. The data mesh will feed more data to those engines. And so it's more than a technology. It's people and process. And I think that's why this is not only different, but that's why I think this deserves the hype that it's getting. But there's a lot of work to get there. Nothing simple.
Okay, that makes sense. And now I know why you're why so passionate about it, because you connect with people very well and you love the technology. So that's why you're doing data mesh, Adrian, out there. So fair enough. And I think definitely it's a game changer. And I like it when you say, let's not make it a hype, rather, focus on the technology and how it's changing. And, the approach has to be evolving with the technology. So that's what you're doing, which is fantastic. Let's take the questions as I promised to our audience here. I know there's a question around industry use cases. We'll definitely be getting there. But let's take a comment from Susan here. She's asking, does Adrian know about the data dish cloth? So Susan out there is the classification guru, and she fixes the dirty data. So definitely, Adrian, you need to check out and learn more about the data dish cloth.
I love it. The classification guru. Wow, Susan, you got to come on Data Mesh TV soon. So no, do you know what the data dish cloth is? I would love to learn about it, Ravi. I don't know.
It's Susan has a lot of frameworks out there. One is COAT, which is consistency, and then there are there's COAT to all of those taxonomy. I'm sorry, Susan, I can't remember the COAT, which she'll definitely take my case for, but that's there. So check out Susan. She's doing great stuff. And
there's something there though, I think, Ravi. I don't know, maybe I'm just gonna imagine what it might be, but I do think, when we start talking about data quality and metadata, the idea of a data dishcloth, which I imagine you're taking all your bad data and you're wiping the bad data away, so to speak, and leaving a clean, that's the image, right? Data, leaving a clean.
Yeah, you might have got her very well, though she says she's in and she's just made that up.
Oh, she did. Well, here's I love the idea because it got me so excited I'm gonna cough.
Yeah.
Here's the challenge that a lot of us have, right? So we have this huge kitchen, we have a tiny little dishcloth, right? And we don't know where to start. And you start wiping the counter, or you start wiping the sink, or you start fixing something. And by the time you're on to the next thing, that spot is dirty again. It's really, really difficult to take our tiny dishcloth and clean data across that huge kitchen, right? It's a big kitchen with data everywhere. If we think about data mesh and we start to organize the kitchen a bit better, and we say, look, I'm never going to get the whole kitchen clean, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on one drawer at a time. And this drawer, I'm going to put all the stuff that's important to that domain team, that customer. And in this drawer, I'm going to put all the stuff that's important to this other customer, other domain team. And you start to organize the kitchen. You're not putting everything in drawers. You're only putting the things in the drawers that people need. And everything you put in a drawer is clean. Everything you put in a drawer, people can trust. That's what a data mesh, I think, is doing. It allows you to focus data quality on the areas that matter the most, the data products within the domains that matter to people. I had 10 IBM consultants at one point helping me kind of fix data quality in the back end. They're never going to finish, right? They were doing great work, but they're never going to finish. It's a big kitchen, right? Maybe I had 1,000 contractors. They still wouldn't finish. But if I can focus too on the right drawers for the right customers, then I have a fighting chance. So I love that data dishcloth. I'm gonna steal it, Susan. I'm gonna steal
it. Yeah, I was just wondering who's gonna actually file a patent for the data dishcloth. Will it be Susan, you, or both of you together?
Datadishcloth.io.
But this is fantastic. I love the analogy, and I love what you know how you've picked it and you've put it in an example for data mesh. No doubt that you are very good at consulting, Adrian, when it comes to data mesh. Also, with the code that I was talking about, Suzanne has mentioned, it's consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy, and that's what she always puts it out there. You should always wear a coat, so which is fantastic. Also, taking up a very interesting question here from Scott Taylor. How does data mesh fit with MDM master data? He has obviously heard Zhamak talking negatively about it, but yet data mesh does not work without data governance standards and unique IDAs. What's your perspective there, Adrian?
Yeah. So, as a CDO, you got two things you're trying to drive, right? Data governance and data value. And I always say you get fired for data governance and you get promoted for data value, but you have to do both. I understand, and I've seen some of the videos that you're referring to. I don't know that Zhamak is saying anything negative about master data management. I think rather in the videos that I've seen, Zhamak is saying simply that the way that we've been doing it needs to be rethought, right? We have to kind of reframe the way we approach master data management. Here's what I would say, and here's my perspective on data mesh. First and foremost, in a data mesh, right? Let's go back to master data sources, right? Your master data sources largely stay the same, right? It doesn't mean that, and we'll get into this more in a second, right? Everybody's data mesh is different. There's somebody out there that's saying, well, Adrian, in my data mesh, I take data from different places and then I put it in a new place and then I change it and then I put it in a new place and then I change it. Every time you change the data in the new place, it becomes a master data source. So we have to kind of take care of the lineage, but you don't have to, right? If you sit back for a second and think about your data mesh design and you try to leave the data where it was sourced, right? It's true master data source and you're not changing it in your analytics, so to speak. You're just putting it together for insight. You can retain as many of those master data sources as possible. That's the first win, right? All of a sudden you can say, great, I'm not having to migrate it, remove it. I'm leaving it where it is. That's the first win. The second idea then is to figure out who owns it, right? Master data management has a lot to do with accountability, right? Who owns the data? There's a lot of ownership on the back end, data sources, data fields. That you have one big data lake with 100 data owners, right? Or data value owners or data definition owners, depending how you set that up. A lot of complexity in the back end. In a data mesh, you have the concept of a domain owner and a concept of data product owners. Those are stewards, right? And so now we need to start thinking about how we leverage these data stewards, right? A domain owner can represent a number of data owners, right? And they can protect the data the way the data owner wants them to. They can make decisions for how the data should be used, can be used, and they can accelerate the process for a consumer who's saying, I just need access to that field. Who do I ask? Ask the domain owner. They have the autonomy, the authority to do it. And so in master data management, you can start thinking about how we treat domain owners and data product owners to kind of help us accelerate the data access request, right? But then if you take a step further back, right, I think that's where it helps. If you take a step back and you think about our standard MDM approaches, we're going to have to start thinking about how we treat data products as well, right? And so what's missing today, I don't have my DAMA book handy, but I had a show and I have constant engagement with the DAMA organization. DAMA has a formal international standard for data governance. It's a good standard. It works. It doesn't mean that you take the book and use it exactly the way it is. It means you take the book and you apply the standards in a way that makes sense for your company. But if that's a starting point, right? And what DAMA is going to do, DAMA has a data mesh focus group right now, I expect DAMA to come back and start to create data governance models specifically for data products, because that's missing today, right? We need to have data governance around data products, how they're used, how they're reused, how they're changed, how they're connected, who owns the data products. And I think that needs to come still. So long answer to a great question, but let me summarize it back. I think a data mesh can help you simplify some elements of master data management because of the way that we treat data, largely leaving it where it is. But I think we also need to expand our master data management thinking to make sure that we include data products in this new world.
Okay, this is fantastic. I think
great question.
Obviously, yeah, great question, Scott, and definitely a fantastic answer, Adrian. There, you have explained, and you've gone back to obviously the MDM principles, and obviously brought a lot of insights for us here. Scott says he'll be on your show too.
All right, Scott, let's do it. Hey, but wait, Scott, we can't whisper though. Maybe, I don't know if it'll come across that. Mesh. No, we won't talk about it. It'll sound weird. No,
I'm sure Scott is not a whisperer. He is loud out there. So definitely you should have him on the show. And I'm planning to have him on the show as well very soon. So great answer. Thanks for that, Adrian. Obviously, that brings me to another question from audience by Ganesh, and which obviously you've just touched on, which is data mesh versus data governance. What's your take? Do you actually, take it differently? How do you look at data governance?
Everything you do today. So let me answer the question this way, because let me try to take a different perspective than the one that I just gave. So if I am implementing a data mesh, there's a data governance team in your company who's saying, hold on a second, what are you guys about to do? And so this is the way that I would approach it. First and foremost, I would try to leverage a data governance processes and principles you already have in place. Those are going to need to change. There's ways to make that better. There's ways to make that more efficient, but I don't think you do that right off the bat. I think when you think about a data mesh, without a doubt, there's people listening to the call right now that would say it's about federated governance. It's about giving teams autonomy to make decisions on how to drive their governance. Yes, you're right. You don't get there in day one, right? You may not get there in day 90 or day 180, right? I think first and foremost, you have to take your data governance principles that are already established, and you have to apply them to that first round, your first domain, your first data product, or your second domain, your second set of data products, your third domain. You think you apply that consistently to get started with it. When I'm talking about data quality policies, I'm talking about data ownership, I'm talking about master data management, data access rules, all these things that make up that data governance will. I think you already have a process in place to do that. You try to apply that to your domains and data products consistently. Now, what will happen, hopefully, is once you kind of get running with your domains and your products, you're going to realize that some domains have different governance requirements or different risk profiles than other domains. That's awesome, right? And so then you can start to kind of refine that governance and say, well, for this domain, I'm going to allow them to manage access a little bit lighter because they're not dealing with high risk data. Or this domain, I'm going to tighten the screws down because they're dealing with very, confidential high risk data sets. And so you can start to federate some of that governance, but that takes time, right? That's a maturity step. And so getting started, my advice would be try to keep it consistent, use what you already have in place. And when I say use what you have in place, not just your processes, but also your tools, right? You've got data governance tools, data quality tools. They're already there. When we talk about a data mesh ecosystem, Ravi, it's an ecosystem, right? It's all the tools that you already use. Your catalog tools, your MDM tools, your data quality tools, they are part of your data mesh ecosystem. They all need to work together. Again, you don't build that overnight. You kind of work slowly to kind of get that integrated, but it's a really key part for your end solution.
Yeah, I think these insights are fantastic. And I'm sure Ganesh has got his answer very well. Thanks for that, Adrian. Also, taking one interesting question that we had from Ujwal Goel here. Hey, Ujwal, nice to see you here. How do you avoid pitfalls of silos with data mesh? Interesting.
Yeah, it's good. So I think, so first and foremost, I think the one answer would be, because I've had these conversations a couple of different ways, right? So one thing that companies do, let me tell the whole story before you jump in and say, so some companies, what they'll do is to avoid the silos, they'll start with a bunch of small domains, right? We're going to break these silos down. And you have a bunch of architects in a room creating small domains, right? We're going to force people into these new domains. that's one way to break the silos, right? Avoid the pitfalls of silos. But I don't know if that's effective, because there's a lot of change required when you're trying to get people to work in new domain teams and you break them apart. And so I think a better approach might sound like a siloed approach. You start with big domains, right? You start with big domains. You create natural sharing models with, it's easier to share within a domain. And so you're focusing a set of consumers on a big domain. I know it sounds like a silo, but here's what you want to do, right? You want to change organically, right? As you start to understand the analytics use cases within that domain, you will define areas that make sense to break apart, right? So I love, you think about what pharma is doing, the R&D teams in pharma, they were already broken down into natural domains. So in those organizations, they work in these natural domains already, these natural silos already. So then in some respects, their data mesh is easy to get going because they're already used to working that way. Unfortunately, because they're used to working in silos and separate domains, they're not sharing very well. You have other organizations that are used to work in these big central IT models. And so maybe it's easier to share, but they're too far in the other direction, right? And so the advice is, and making sure I'm clear here, because I feel like I'm kind of giving you a really big answer. The advice here is that first and foremost, you start with a domain that captures a functional group like finance, for example. And then you work organically in that domain to break it apart once you understand the analytics teams that are starting to work, right? I don't think you rush immediately to share across the domains. Sometimes we know that's the goal for data mesh. We know that's the bigger value for data mesh, but I guarantee you there's incredible value just sharing within the domain. There's big wins for your business when they can get to data. There's big wins for your business when they can share products within the individual teams themselves. There's value there. That's a big win. When you get to that point where you want to really democratize and break across traditional silos, I want my retail team to share with my trading team, right? Or I want my R&D team to share more with an external team. Those are huge wins, but I don't think that those silos are the ones you break first, right? You need to start to kind of get teams to work better within their domains, and then you can start to kind of realize opportunities across domains.
Oh, wow, this is fantastic. I think you just have like a roadmap in your mind, Adrian, which you kind of follow very well. And it's not just only for, the company, like one particular industry, but all the industries might have different approaches, which I would love to hear more about. But that brings me to one important question, which is more on the lines where, since you kind of, obviously do a lot for Starburst. So can you speak to how Starburst's product, support data mesh? What's like the angle there? Would love to, get a insight there.
I'll first say, because I wanted to make sure I said this at some point, and yes, the questions are so good, I'm going to forget to say it. So let me interject with something. I think there are many different kinds of data meshes, and they're going to have audience members saying, no, well, work with me here. Bear with me for a second, right? Be patient with me. So what I mean by that is everybody's journey is different. I think we all have a vision, or we aspire to develop every element of the data mesh, right? We want the autonomy. We want the self-service where teams are doing more on their own. We want the federated computational governance where we're using data to drive and create efficiency on the governance side. We want all of that. We don't get there overnight. I think when we start thinking about what Starburst does for a data mesh, the first thing that we do is that first step, the connectivity, that's our bread and butter. We do that really, really well, right? I'll argue, and maybe I'm biased, but the reason I came here is because I think we do it better than anybody else, right? It's the magic sauce there is Trino, right? Our ability to connect to all those different data sources using a 10-year-old proven, tested technology is fantastic, right? And so for that step one, a lot of our customers are very happy with their data mesh. They got a data mesh. They're happy with it. I co-presented with somebody recently on a beautiful data mesh, and all they did was that first step. All they did was connect it. You'll be surprised how big of a win that is for your consumers when you're just able to connect all those data sources. Huge win. You'll get promoted. Now, the second part, obviously, is when people recognize a data mesh, they're like, okay, let me see your domains. Let me see your data products. Let me see how they're working. And so in Starburst, we also have the ability out of the box for you. And when you start thinking about open source Trino versus what we do in Starburst, well, here's we start to kind of get into some of the magic is within Starburst, we give you the ability to configure domains. We give you the ability to configure data products. We create a catalog where you can see all those data products, where you can search for data products, where you can assess and judge. I don't like it, the quality's bad, or I love it, the quality's great. And so we provide, if you will, out of the box, the ability for teams to manage a mesh with domains and data products and a catalog. There's more coming. Just like I said about the journey, right? We have our own journey as well. There's more that we want to do from a self-service side. There's more that we want to provide from a federated computational site, and that's going to come. But right now, today, I think organizations get started very quickly with Starburst because we can cover all those basic steps.
Okay, that's pretty cool, and it's something obviously with the happy customers. I'm sure you kind of get more confident in what you're doing, Adrian, and that obviously we can see that confidence and see that data mesh is in safe hands when it comes to you talking about it. So thanks for that description. But one question that I'm sure that most of our audience would also have is around what challenges are you seeing organizations face when they first get started on their data mesh journey, and how do you guys solve that problem for them? So that's very important.
So I feel like a lot's changed just in the last 3 months. I felt like 3, even maybe 4 months ago, a lot of the conversations, and I have 4 talk tracks that I do. One is about learning. One is about building. So what is it? The second one is, how do I build it? Third one is, how do I operate it? And then the fourth one is, how do I optimize it? Most of my conversations for the initial 3 or 4 months that I was here was around what is it, right? Really defining it. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think as a hype, if you will, for data mesh grew, I think everybody wanted to jump on the bandwagon and we're data mesh and we're data mesh and we do data mesh. Exactly. And so I know that I just gave a great commercial for Starburst, but if you go rewind a little bit to where I started at the very beginning of our conversation, I think you'll find I gave a very neutral position, right? I talked about the 3 steps in a very neutral perspective, right? There's a lot of technologies that work well together. And I talked about the ecosystem. It's not just about the analytics tools. It's also about the storage tools. And it's also about the data management, data quality, and catalog tools. So that being said, I think the first thing that I think from a challenge perspective, the companies have to kind of get through is that misinformation phase, get the learning phase, get that foundation in place. The second thing they need to understand is what their strategy is, right? So how do I get started is one of the biggest questions I get, Ravi. Like, where do I start? Exactly. And because we're used to these ugly migration projects and transfer, and I say ugly, don't get me wrong, I've done them. I was a cloud migration leader for a while. And so I know how painful that is, right? I led large ERP transformations. So we have those scars, if you will, in our souls from how hard that work was. And we think about data mesh, naturally we think it's going to be that difficult. But answering that first question for how to get started. So pick an area, pick somewhere where you can start to create immediate value, start small. That's the first win for most organizations. But then, as I said a second ago, the strategy says, where else am I going to go? Or how do I start to piece everything together? So building a data mesh strategy, I think, is the first thing that people struggle with. I think the second thing that people struggle with is trying to find the right sponsor. If you have a great IT sponsor for data mesh, that's awesome. Fantastic. You need a business sponsor as well. And because data mesh is about really focused on your consumer, you have to have a business sponsor engaged. And that's the second challenge I think companies are faced with, is making sure that they find the right business executive sponsor, somebody who's all in on becoming data driven, somebody who's all in on driving better decisions and driving better analytics ultimately, right? That understands and wants to be a part of that data culture, right? Business sponsors is super important. The other thing that I think maybe companies struggle with is maybe they're missing, I talked about those 4 talk tracks, right? They're missing the broader perspective on operations and optimization. We talked about the hype of data mesh. Data mesh is a capability, right? People, process, technology, capability that fits into a broader digital transformation strategy, right? And so when an organization is becoming digitally transformed, it's not just analytics. There's a lot more there, right? There's how we deliver projects, moving from waterfall to agile, right? There's so much more involved when we start thinking about digital transformation, and data mesh is just one small piece of the bigger picture. I think getting started, you need a good strategy, getting started, you need to have a good IT and business sponsor. And getting started, you need to start thinking at the beginning about how you're going to operate and how you're going to optimize. If you build a data mesh, if you don't design it right from the start, you could get into a situation where it becomes expensive, right? Hey, I built a data mesh. What did you do? I moved all my data into this one really expensive lake where we have really expensive analytics. Yeah, how are you going to sustain that, right? And so I think every solution, if you stop back and you think about that data mesh strategy, you could have a Starburst sitting right here, and you could have another tool sitting right next to it. That's okay, right? You may have a Snowflake or a Databricks sitting right next to it, right? And those tools work really well together. You want the optionality to say, I can put 80% of my use cases through Starburst because of the performance and the cost and my ability to optimize and the speed that I can deliver to the business, right? Sometimes, Ravi, we talk about the analytics speed. I can do a query in less than a second. It'll just take me 6 months to get the data there. Okay.
Oh my.
I can do a query in less than 2 seconds and give me a couple of days to get it there, right? So when we talk about speed, it's not the speed of the query itself. It's about the speed of the overall delivery and the cost to get there. And so again, a lot that I think we're struggling with, but I think more and more I see some really successful organizations kind of maneuvering through that and pulling it together into the right strategy.
Okay, this is fantastic. Very nice information there, Adrian. Thanks for that. Also, I know for a fact that you guys are doing something around this for a lot of companies, which is like designing and building your Pathfinder, and that's like the 90-day data mesh Pathfinder that's coming up for the folks who are interested. Definitely, I've shared a link for them in the comments there, so they can sign up. I know for a fact it's happening on the June 15th. So, and it's available for free for everyone to join in. What will you be covering there, Adrian, just for our audience here?
I have to explain 90-day Pathfinder first. I don't mean to, because I've had this conversation with a couple of colleagues that I trust, internal and external. There's a nice, really smart community of data mesh professionals out there. And sometimes when we say 90-day Pathfinder, it sounds like, oh, we're going to get the whole thing done in 90 days. The key word there is Pathfinder, right?
Pathfinder, right?
Every transformation program that I've ever done, I've been doing this for a long time, right? And every transformation program for 20 something years, the ones that were successful started with an effective Pathfinder. I know we could use the word proof of concept. We can also use the word, MVP, minimum viable product. That's a Pathfinder, right? I like to call it a showcase, not a use case, right? The purpose of a Pathfinder is to stress technology this much, people and process this much, right? It's rolling out a single domain, 5 or 6 data products, and getting people to understand how to use it. And so the outcome of your 90-day Pathfinder, whether it's 60 days or 90 days, or 120 days, it's up to you, right? It does not focus on the 90 days. It's a time box activity. You have a short, I like to do it in a quarter if we can, a time box activity where you're going to create a data strategy. You're going to create a showcase, a production showcase. Here is a domain, here are data products, and here are the consumers that are using them. And they're using them in Power BI or Tableau or now however they're using them, right? You can prove that they're using them. And then that's workstream 1 is data strategy. Workstream 2 is actually building the domains and data products. And then workstream 3 is training the consumer, right? So workstream 3, you get a couple of consumers in the room, and you guys are going to use data products. Data product owner, domain owner, we're going to train you on what that means. And you get them to think about what their activities are, what their accountabilities are. When you give a data product to a consumer, they become a data steward as well. And you have to make sure that they understand how to protect the data and how to use the data. But the value of the Pathfinder, if you think about the deliverables, is you get a data mesh strategy, you get a showcase that other people can look at and say, oh, I see how it works. And you get a set of ambassadors because you've trained a few people on how to use it. That's how you start. You're going to make mistakes. It ain't going to be perfect, right? You're not going to solve every data governance model or issue when you do that. You have to pick and choose the right use case, pick and choose the right governance elements you include. But you're going to learn a tremendous amount with that first Pathfinder, with that first showcase. And that gives you the momentum because now you get people excited, like, wait a minute, that wasn't so hard. And I guarantee you the next domain you build will be faster. And that domain that you have built will start to create new data products. If I can add one more thing, Ravi, just because I think sometimes we focus so much on celebrating when it's built. And there's a moment that I think is really special when you build that first data product. We and everybody in the room that's a data architect or a CDO, I think this will resonate with. You can spend, I don't think you shouldn't spend this long, but I've been in a situation with someone that told me that they spent 4 months building a data product. And then they took it to the data consumer, and the data consumer said, that's terrible. And they said, we gave you everything you wanted, right? We had this table, we have this row, we got the field from that data over there. We've hidden these parts, and they took a long time building it. They were using a different tool to build it, but it was okay, still a data product. And then the business said, yeah, I don't like it. So what I learned is no matter how hard you work to build that first data product, it's going to be wrong, right? So instead of spending 4 months building it, I'd rather spend a week building it. What do you want? You want this? You want that? You want this? Great. Let me. There you go. All right. Here's the data product. Does it look good? No, it stinks. All right. Here's the magic, Robbie. The magic is this. When they tell you what's wrong with it and you can fix it fast, if you can fix it in front of them and say, okay, hold on a second. Let me add that table. Let me get rid of that field. Let me hide. If you can fix it in front of them and then you say, is that what you're looking for? And they say, and then what's going to happen is they realize this is a new way of working, right? This whole idea of building pipelines and waiting months, those days are gone, right? When they realize in that moment that they can ask for data and they can get it re-aggregated, if you will, in a way that they can use immediately, and they can change their mind, because discovery isn't about getting it perfect. Discovery is about changing and adapting and refining. When they realize they can do that fast, that's the magic moment in a Pathfinder, because then you've got them. They're like, all right, now you know how to use it. Now let's roll up our sleeves because we have a lot of work to do to make it right.
Oh my!
Is that too much, Ravi? Is that too much passion?
No, this is too much passion. I love it, Adrian, and the way you explain is fantastic. We kind of obviously when that's why I always say when Adrian is out there, a true advocate for data mesh, and he knows his stuff very well. So great explanation there, definitely. And for those obviously who wish to join in the 90-day Pathfinder webinar, it's not just obviously, as Adrian mentions, he loves to keep it 90 days. He loves to get there very quickly. So if you're interested, I've shared a link below and you can check out and register for it. It's happening on the 15th of June. We also have a comment from Dan Demers. I love the GTM approach. I now plan to explore something similar for DataWare. And great stuff. Thanks for joining in, Dan.
I love it. They all have these really cool. I need to get a really cool avatar. Do you have one with a cool avatar? Because I don't. I need to look at Dan's avatars, the sunglasses and the mustache. Yeah, I need something like that.
Yeah, and I know for a fact where Dan is the co-founder and CEO of Cinchi, and everyone at his company has such avatars, which is very cool. And I don't know if I have already mentioned it to Dan, but I have one avatar which is on my banner behind on the LinkedIn, but I love avatars too. And at least for those folks who kind of do the shows, they love those avatars. Like you see the banner behind me. Yeah. I wanted an avatar rather than me being photogenic there, but maybe I'll do it very soon.
I love it. I'm having a shirt made, and it wasn't ready for today, but I was planning to wear like the Ravit Show shirt, today to support. But it didn't come in time, unfortunately. But next time you see me, Ravi, I'll have your shirt on.
We have all the Goa plans coming in, so definitely.
Well, we're doing a data mesh community council in Goa. Yeah. So.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Well, we are, right, Ravi? We're going to plan it, right? So for all my friends in India that I've been to Goa with in the past, we're going to do it again.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it. And, obviously for all the folks who are attending, if you are up for something like Data Council in Goa, contact me and Adrian. We are hosting that for sure. Now it's on record, so we have to do it anyways.
We'll do the Antares hotels right there on the cliff. It's perfect. Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Dan mentions he can hook us up and we can get those going. Thanks a lot, Dan, for that. We would love to obviously get the avatars and get a very cool headshot like yours out there. All right. Quickly actually, I don't want to miss out on questions from our audience. So here we are back to a question from Manisha. Let's take this one. Can you tell us about the challenges in data mesh today? Love these insights, Adrian.
Thanks, Manisha. Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question, because sometimes we like, oversell it a little bit, and then we forget that there's work involved. And anybody that's worked in
Exactly.
data, there's no way that you're going to sit there and say it's not that easy. Nothing is easy. So the first challenge, without doubt, is data quality, and it's the same challenge we've all had, right? So I remember implementing a big, awesome, expensive, but super great data cataloging tool a few years ago, and then being so disappointed when I couldn't use it. I couldn't leverage it because my metadata was bad. The first time you connected to a big data source, and then you're like, you can't wait to see it, and then you see it, and there's nothing there, and then you realize the metadata isn't good enough. It breaks your heart and breaks your wallet, right? So I think the first challenge is data quality and metadata. Where a data mesh can help, I think, is with you pick a domain owner that knows the data, they can help fill in some of those gaps. A data fabric is awesome. I love data fabric technology. If you have good metadata and you can build good knowledge graphs, a data fabric can help a lot. And I love merging the idea of a data fabric with the data mesh at that level. But if you don't have good metadata or data quality, you rely more on a human, more on a domain owner to kind of be that, provide you the insight. So that's the first challenge. I think that the second challenge then is accountability. As I mentioned previously, I think DAMA, the data governance organization, is kind of looking at data mesh and trying to come back with some guidelines for data product owners and domain owners and data stewards and so forth. But for a lot of us, we don't have very good, how can I be honest but nice? Our data, I can't curse in the show, so I'm not going to curse, but we stink at data ownership. Data accountability is poor. When some data quality is bad and you knock on the door and say, hey, your data is bad. Oh, it's not mine. Go talk to this guy. You go talk to that person. Oh, it's not mine. Go talk to her, someone down the hall. And so accountability for data isn't very good in organizations. And I think that will show itself once you start to bring data forward to domains and products and the data isn't good. And you got to go hunt down whoever is in charge of fixing the data. That takes a lot of time. And there's no shortcuts there, right? It is what it is, so to speak. The last thing I would say is data access. I would say the biggest challenge is data access. What we're going to do now is we're going to create data products that it was a great question earlier about silos. The nice thing about starting with and I hate to say it, but starting with a silo is that everybody in that silo has access to the data, right? And so we start with a domain for a specific function. You can kind of accelerate data access and create some policies and create some rules that say everybody here can access all this data, and you can run and start creating products and people are using them. It's a beautiful world. When you start to cross across silos and try to drive real data democratization, that data access is hard because those people don't naturally have access to those data products. And so in Starburst, you click on a data product, you don't have access to it. You can still see the description, but you can't see any of the data. So then you have to request access for it. And so our current access mechanisms in most of our organizations aren't very efficient. There's not an easy way to do that, right? And so I think that's something we're going to all have to fix. And I think we're going to have to reframe the way our data access rules today are application centric, right? So for anybody out there that works in data access, hopefully you'll agree with me. They're very application centric in the sense that we're using RBAC. Based on your role, you have access to these data sets. And it's not going to work in a data world, right? In a data-centric world, we need to create policies that say, if you look like this and you're trying to access data that looks like that, and you're sitting in a place of attributes, if you will, that looks like this, then you can access it, right? So we need to kind of get more towards policy-based or attribute-based access rules. And so, sorry, I'm going to go off on a tangent there, but data access, I would say, is probably next to data quality, is probably the biggest challenge right now for data mesh.
Wow. This is a great question and a great answer. Thanks for that, Adrian. Also, Dan mentions that data fabric plus data mesh plus data centric is equal to bliss. So, which is very true. And also for fabric for integration, data for federation, centric for zero integration apps. So amazing.
Somebody said this in my previous company. I love that. I always used a quote. They talked about like the holy grail is like they talked about so self-service working, so empowering teams to do their own work, data mesh, right? Connecting all your data where it is today, and agile ways of working, right? So DevOps or agile. And so those three things together work really well. It kind of gives everybody an opportunity for success because you're enabling people to do more on their own. You're working in an agile way. You start small and you build and iterate over time. And you do that by leveraging your data where it sits very, very quickly with a data mesh. So
Okay.
another
Wow.
trio. Dan, I wanted to offer you another trio back.
This is fantastic information. Thanks for sharing that, Adrian. But obviously, when we talk about challenges, that also, brings me to a question where the data mesh execution kind of plays a very important role. And what's one thing that thing you must do correctly to avoid unexpected costs or to get the data mesh right? What are your thoughts there? How have you actually, I would say, I know for a fact you've saved millions of dollars for companies where they were not using it rightly, and you've showed them that way. So would love to hear about those examples maybe.
Yeah. So what's the one thing? The one thing is there isn't one thing, right? But I think let's just take that first question kind of straight out, right? So from a cost perspective, right, where are some things
Yep.
you can do to make sure that you're building a sustainable TCO for your data mesh? I think first and foremost, I think you need to start, as I said, I don't mean to rehash it again, but start small with a Pathfinder, right? If you don't want to build something big and fail big, you want to build something small. I'm not going to say you fail small, but you're going to learn, right? And so don't make a mistake of trying to build the enterprise solution from day one, right? Build something small for a specific team, and you can get that done quickly, right? So that's the first lesson, right? Start small. I think the second lesson, and I want to try really hard to be neutral here, but it may not come across as me being neutral, but the way that you deliver your analytics matters, right? In a data mesh, think about the total cost of ownership for your data product. How much does it cost me to create that data product? I had a monetization, a data mesh TV show earlier today, and it really got me thinking about this. When you think about the TCO for a data product, that matters. If building a data product is expensive because you've got to move your data somewhere and then analyze your data there, and you've got to have somebody actually change a data model for a data product, yeah, that might be what you have to do for some cases. That's okay. There may be a reason to do that for some cases, but you shouldn't do that for every data product you build. It's not sustainable. It's not a good approach, right? You need to be able to manage data products with efficiency in a very low cost way and optimize that, right? You need the levers to say, here's a data product. I'm going to build it this way because this is the value that's going to create. Here's a data product. I'm going to build it that way. And I don't mind spending a little bit more money because here's the value it's going to create. You need that optionality. So maybe I'll stop there with that before I go any further. But I think one big thing to think about when you think about optimization is what is the total cost of ownership for your data product? And again, not to,
right.
I think there's one way to do it that works really well. And maybe it's Starburst.
That's very cool, Adrian. Thanks for that question. To myself, and I know for a fact where you know you've worked with a lot of financial companies, and towards the end of the show, I'll be asking one question, which will be fun game type of question, and the audience joining us. You can wait for that very cool question that's coming up. But before that, I would just like to, quickly remind our folks who have, participated in getting, the raffle that we're doing today. And it's a book by Zhamak, a hard copy with a personalized note by me. So feel free to type in, for those who are joining us late, hashtag data mesh in the chat, and we'll be doing the raffle after this question. After the school game, actually, that I wanted to play with you, Adrian. I know you worked with a lot of financial companies, like I mentioned. So let's do this. Let's have you name as many financial services use cases that have used data mesh, and you have to be as fast as you can. So
shoot. All right, well, okay. Let me give you a couple of quick ones. Then I want to. Well, let me just say. Anti-money laundering, payment services, trading, customer 360 from a financial customer 360. This is not one that I've seen, but it's one I'm excited about. This idea of a financial digital twin. I think I've run out of. Yeah, that's my list.
and there might be many more in pipeline, which will be.
You know what's interesting, Ravi, about that question is because I was thinking, I have to be really careful. So. It's easy when you think about data mesh, throw it at every analytics problem that we have. And I gave you some. I know anti-money laundering. We just gave a show on it last week. I think it's a really great use case for it. Customer 360 is another really great use case for it. Trading as well. So those are really good use cases. But we have to be careful not to take data mesh and then throw it at every analytics problem. It probably somebody could say it'll solve them all, but we have to be, it's a part about that data mesh strategy. Where can my data mesh create the greatest value today, provide the biggest impact today?
Right.
And if I'm a financial company today, I'm looking at maybe at those use cases and trying to pick the right one that makes the most sense. It could help all of those, but I don't necessarily that I would sit here and tell you it will help all of those. Yeah, it depends. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Also, we have a LinkedIn user asking us something around pharmaceutical use cases. Are there any pharmaceutical use cases that you have on top of your mind?
Gosh, yes, there's some amazing. I've been saying this for about 2 weeks. I had an opportunity to sit in a Prismy forum. It's a forum. It's a community of pharmaceutical R&D teams, and I had the privilege to present there with some colleagues, and I was impressed by what pharma is doing in data mesh. I hope I don't offend anybody. Get somebody out there saying that's not true, but I think pharmaceuticals has, especially R&D, has some of the most mature data mesh implementations that I've seen. Not just the implementation, but the roadmap, right? And so they can talk about the journey they've taken and where they're going. And so I've learned, Ravit, we all learn, right? And so I think it's okay for us to say, the one, we're wrong, and two, we learn, and three, we learn from others. I learned a lot from that forum. So if we think about some of the use cases, first and foremost, I think if it's, well, gosh, I don't know if I'm able to, I probably shouldn't give any specifics, so otherwise I risk violating a rule or something. But if I talk generically about pharma, you're talking about taking, the first challenge is you're taking health data, right? Privacy data, right?
Exactly.
There's a concern there for how you deal with it. And so the ability in a mesh to be careful and manage who can seek what, that's really, really important. The second piece is because you're trying to connect from data from so many different places, what you're affecting, right? If you're creating drugs or developing drugs, you're affecting that drug process, right? You're creating a more efficient life cycle, right? From ideation to discovery to testing to rollout, right? You're able to do that more quickly when you're able to bring data sets forward, so to speak. You're also able to kind of manage the market, right? So you can take market data out there in terms of how drugs are affecting patients or what demands are out there for different types of drugs or what's coming, so to speak. So, man, there's so many use cases on the pharma side. And what makes pharma so interesting as well from an R&D perspective is that, I mentioned this earlier, they're already built with a domain structure, right? By design, these pharma teams, when you look at kind of where they started, they kind of already started with domain thinking, right? And I know if there's any pharma colleagues on the call today, they're going to say they have a long way to go still, right? Because sharing across those domains is hard. But they didn't have to worry about all the change management with domains because in a way they already had natural domains. And so they were in a sense, they kind of had that advantage over other organizations that are starting to think about where to start with the domain. But yeah, pharma is fantastic. It's just fantastic.
Wow, I can't wait. Definitely. And, obviously with your experience in the industries, with the different industries, there'll be like in the next 2 years, I'm sure you'll have like so much to discuss, so many more industries that we'll be obviously talking about. And I know there's a question around the future of data mesh in the chat. I'll bring that up, but let's not make our audience wait anymore, and let's go and pick a winner. This is a very cool way, Adrian, how I usually pick my winners, and it's a random raffle. I promise I've not rigged it by any chance, but I have actually gone and obviously put a hashtag myself to just check that it was working, and it does. So if I win, we'll redraw the entries, guys. But this is a very cool way. So let's see who the winner is. It's Nelson de Jesus.
Nelson's my cousin.
Oh my!
No, I'm joking. Wow. I'm joking.
I was actually going to redraw because I would have been pretty sure that you would have shared the book with Nelson if he is your cousin.
That would have been funny.
Oh,
congratulations, yeah. Nelson.
Congratulations, Nelson. You'll get a hard copy of Data Mesh book. And for those who have, obviously didn't get a chance to win the book, what I'll be doing is sharing a link here and you can download the book for free. So everyone's a winner. And yeah, quickly wanted to take this question from Ravina Ostwal here. Ravina is asking, would like to know more about the future journey of data mesh. Like, what's the future, Adrian? Very big
Well,
question.
I think it's happening. There's something happening right now, right? So what's happening right now, I think, is we're starting to understand how data mesh is applying to business problems, right? So we started talking about data mesh as an
Oh.
architectural challenge, as a technology problem with architecture conversations. And then I feel like recently all my conversations are at the executive level, business level. We're talking about how to apply data mesh to bigger business problems. That's happening right now. And so that's fantastic to see that people are appreciating data mesh as, again, as a framework with people, process, and organization that can affect bigger opportunities in a company. So that's one change that I think as we're seeing now. From a technology perspective, what's going to happen down the road is I'm really excited. We talked about data fabric earlier, right? I'm really excited. I see some companies already trying to use AI to kind of create efficiency around the domains. That's exciting, right? I'm excited to see how we really do better rated computational governance. If anybody's figured that out yet, give us a ring, right? It's not easy to do, right? It's hard to do, but I think there are technologies out there that are going to start to kind of leverage that, the framework. You understand what data mesh works, and then you can start to use analytics to push governance and analytics to manage governance. You make it easier to audit, easier to secure. Wow, right? There's a lot there,
So
right?
much. Yeah.
The last thing I would say from a data mesh is, and I don't think we're seeing this in too many places yet, but right now we're talking about building data products for internal use. If we could all tie in, Ravi, maybe you can do this with your influence, right? If we could drive everyone to have the same data product standard, I don't care where you build your data product, right? I don't care, because there's a lot of great ways to build it. I like the way we build it as well. But in any ecosystem, you may have multiple data products from different places. If we were all building data products the same way, Ravina, then we would have the ability to share data products across organizations. And I think that's the future for data mesh. We just somehow have to find a way to kind of stick to a structure and a common standard so that we can get there. But I leave that up to Ravi because he's got the influence to do it.
Thanks for that answer. Great question, Ravina. Obviously, it's coming from our horse's mouth, so I believe it, and I can't wait for the data mesh future, how it looks like. So thanks for that. Quickly, wanted to ask you this question in terms of if folks want to reach out to you, Adrian, learn more about data mesh TV. What's like the best approach there?
Thank you for that, Ravi. We'll include a link. Something that we're doing a lot with a lot of customers right now is we're doing a free 2-hour workshop where we can sit down over 2 hours and we customize a Pathfinder exercise. We don't do all that in 2 hours, but we can start to kind of create a structure for what your Pathfinder looks like. A lot of people that are getting started are finding just incredible value in just that. And I'm happy to do that. That's something we can do for free.
Okay.
So we'll include a link.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. Also, tell us more about the Data Mesh TV. What are you doing at the Data Mesh TV?
Well, let me. I'm not nearly as well versed and polished as you are. It's different being a guest, but as a guest, even today, I'm learning how to be a better host by watching you. I have a show out there, Ravi. You'll laugh. I did with one of my CDO friends from Shell, Marco. He's such a patient guy. And you know what I did? Of course, you won't be surprised, but I talked the whole show. I asked a question, and then I answered it, and then I asked another question, and then I answered it. And I was lucky that he was so patient with me. But I'm getting better at it. We did 6 shows so far. If you do a search on LinkedIn for Data Mesh TV, you'll find them. And we try to bring different topics, right? It's not just about the architecture view; it's different lenses. The one this morning was on how to monetize data and in a data mesh. Interesting conversation. So yeah, just learning from the pros that are out there and trying to get better at it.
No, I think definitely just 6 shows and you've done so well for you, Adrian. I can't wait to see what's coming up next. And, all the best for the Data Mesh TV. I know for a fact, the next time we talk, it will be in Goa at the Data Council that we are planning. So let's do that. And everyone who's watching, if you're interested, feel free to ping me or Adrian. We'll think around it when we're planning. We'll let you guys know, and we'll also create a group for this one. But finally, it's time, Adrian. I don't wish to leave you, obviously, because you have shared such amazing insights about data mesh. I know for a fact where you've gone into such detailing, and that's just your passion, which you have for data mesh. And I'm sure the folks today who've joined us, thanks first of all for joining us and asking such amazing questions. They've learned a lot from you. So thanks once again for visiting the Ravit Show.
Thank
I
you
hope
so
you
much for
enjoyed
having me.
it. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today.